Welcome to the Pacific Northwest edition of America Outdoors Radio. We've got a fast-paced hour of fishing, hunting, and conservation covering the nation and the Northwest, including 13 extra minutes of local content you'll only hear on Seattle's sports radio, KJR.
It's Saturday morning, and I'm glad you're here. We've got some great regional guests for you today. Bob Loomis will be checking in at the bottom of the hour to tell you about some places you may want to go kokanee fishing at this spring. Not here in Washington, but in Oregon. They've got a whole bunch of good kokanee lakes down there. We'll also talk to Russ Baker again with Limit Out Performance Marine. We are running short on time if you want to register for the Pro-Am event and the Big Bass Tournament taking place at Mardon Resort. The deadline to register for both tournaments is April 21st. And today, Russ is going to tell you more about the Pro-Am event and why you should enter if you're a boater, because you can win another boat, or why you should enter as an amateur, because even if you've never fished a bass tournament before, you can learn a lot in one of these events. Trust me, I did just that last year. This portion of the show is brought to you every week by your Puget Sound area Sportsman's Warehouse stores with locations in Federal Way and Puyallup, as well as Everett, Silverdale, and Sequim. And they've got everything you need for fishing, whether you're after blackmouth in the saltwater, or trout, or panfish, or bass in a lake, or maybe after steelhead in a river. Whatever you're after, they've got you covered, and don't forget hunting and ammo and supplies for the turkey season. After all, the youth season is going on right now. That ends tomorrow, and the general opener starts on April 15th. The place to go, obviously, Northeast Washington, far and away the best place for turkeys, but don't overlook places like the Blue Mountains or even down in Klickitat County. They both offer some opportunities for turkey hunting too, with a lot less crowding. So, turkey hunting season, April 15th for most of us, and it promises to be a good one, especially with the mild spring that we've been having. If you're looking for some other things to do in the week ahead, well, there's more racer clamming available. Starting Monday, April 8th, and running through Sunday, April 14th, you can go in the daylight every day. The low tide on the 8th is at 6:44 a.m. Mock Rocks is open that day. On Sunday the 14th, the low tide is 11:38 a.m. Be sure to check the WDFW website, look for the news release about shell fishing, and find out what beaches are open, when the low tides are happening, and dig yourself some clams. As always, the first 15 clams is your limit. And you want to check the marine toxin results that you can access off the website too. Continuing with fishing, I checked in with Nathan Brents at Mardon Resort, and they've definitely been catching some bass back in the sand dunes, largemouth bass back there. Also a few off the face of the dam, which surprised me a lot, a mix of smallmouth and largemouth. But Nathan says, if you want to go after the walleye, don't hit Potholes or Moses Lake necessarily. Instead, go to Soda Lake that is south of Potholes Reservoir. It's one of the seep lakes there. It's a fairly big lake, several hundred acres, but it fishes really good for walleye during the month of April. Nathan says it's definitely picking up, and several anglers have already gotten limits, in some cases in as little as 2 hours' time. If you need some advice about exactly what to use to catch those fish, contact Pete Fisher or Nathan at the Mardon Resort Tackle Store. And if you're looking for a place to stay, well, go to mardonresort.com and book your stay today. Heading down to the Columbia River, the spring chinook are starting to show up. Even bank anglers were catching some below Bonneville Dam. We're not talking about a lot of success yet, but it is promising that there is some occurring. A better bet might be the Cowlitz River, especially above the I-5 bridge. Creel checkers last week found 48 bank anglers kept 14 steelhead, and 149 anglers and 42 boats kept 79 steelhead, also released 1 chinook and 3 other steelhead. Pretty darn good fishing there, I'd say. And then there's salmon fishing in the Sound. Starting out on the Olympic Peninsula, out at CQ last Sunday, 70 anglers were checked with 20 hatchery chinook, mostly caught around Pillar Point, so that's not doing too bad out there. And looking at creel checks on the 30th of March and the 29th of March, there were some chinook that were picked up in both Marine Area 13, the South Sound, and Marine Area 11, but not a lot. Overall success rate was maybe 1 fish for every 3 anglers at best. But you know what they say, that's fishing. And with that, you are now in the know about what's hot this week in the Pacific Northwest.
That's your first local shot of the outdoors. Now let's see what's going on across the nation.
It's time for America Outdoors Radio, the show that covers the outdoor scene across the U.S. of A. and the entire continent. Fishing, hunting, conservation, outdoor recreation, and great destinations. We cover it all every week. It's your country, your outdoors. Let's explore it together with your host, John Kruse.
Welcome to the show. I hope that you've had a good week and that this weekend is going to be a good one for you too. No complaints about the week I've just had. Things started off with a doctor's appointment regarding the torn tendon from my kneecap that I sustained in February. And I got great news. After 7 weeks, I was able to take that leg brace off and walk around unassisted. Now, I still do use the leg brace when I'm walking over rough terrain because frankly, my muscles and my knee aren't quite ready for that yet, but still, very nice to have that leg brace off. And even when the leg brace is on, I've now got it dialed back, so I've got a little movement in it. So that was great news. Then, right after that, my son came over for a visit. We got to do a little fishing from the bank. Beautiful day, sunny, 75. Didn't catch anything, but that's okay. The company was good. Went out for dinner, then came back to the house and watched the sunset on the back patio as we smoked a couple of Mack cigars and listened to the Seattle Mariners play the Cleveland Guardians. The only bad thing that happened was that Cleveland won. But that's all right. We've got a lot of season ahead when it comes to baseball. Speaking of fishing, Field and Stream readers were asked about 32 largemouth bass baits and which one was the very best one to use. Shay Baker wrote an article about this, and apparently the results were not even close. 63% of the voters voted for the plastic worm. According to Shay, the reason it won was because it can catch fish in a very wide variety of situations. In shallow, muddy water, a black Texas rig ribbon-tail worm like an 8-inch zoom dead ringer is easy for bass to see. If you're fishing deep, clear water, a straight-tail robo worm ringed off a drop shot is hard to beat. And around rocks, wood, grass stalks, and just plain bare bottom, you can slip a zoom trick worm onto a shaky head and catch nearly every fish around. Well, maybe you can, Shay. I can't, but I got to agree with you. Plastic worms, I love them, especially fishing them wacky ring when we get towards the spawn, and I'm looking forward to doing that towards the end of the month when I am fishing a Pro-Am tournament in my home lake, Potholes Reservoir. We've got another story to share from Field and Stream, and this one isn't so happy. A fertilizer spill caused a massive fish kill in southwest Iowa last month. According to an Iowa Department of Natural Resources press release, agricultural company New Cooperative Incorporated inadvertently released around 1,500 tons, which equates to 265,000 gallons of liquid nitrogen fertilizer into a drainage ditch before reaching the East Nishnabotna River. Why did the release occur? Well, somebody left a storage tank valve open all weekend long. Officials immediately responded to the scene to stop the discharge and begin cleanup, but it was too late to mitigate the effects of the spill. Just about all aquatic life in a 60-mile stretch of the river, of the East Nishnabotna and Nishnabotna rivers downstream of the Skill, all the way to the confluence of the Nishnabotna to the Missouri River in Missouri, were affected. Matt Combs, an Ecological Health Unit Science Supervisor for the Missouri Department of Conservation, told the New York Times, "I refer to this as the big one. A near-total fish kill for 60 miles of river is astounding and disheartening." The Iowa DNR estimates that at least 749,000 fish died in the incident as of March 28th. Combs says another 40,000 fish died in Missouri. The majority of the deceased fish were minnows, shiners, dace, chub, as well as thousands of channel catfish and at least 264 flathead catfish. On top of that, there was carp. Carp, sunfish, and sturgeon were also killed. And that's just a fish. Frogs, snakes, mussels, and earthworms also impacted. Officials will continue to assess the impacts of the spill. I'm pretty certain the agricultural company is going to be paying some heavy fines, and officials are also cautioning the public against recreating on or near the river. That's not the only major fish loss to report on. The Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife reports that a fish tanker truck was involved in an accident while transporting about 102,000 spring Chinook smolts for release into the Anaha River in northeast Oregon. The driver of the truck is safe but received minor injuries after rolling at a sharp corner with the truck going over an embankment. The accident occurred along Looking Glass Creek, which is a tributary of the Grand Ronde River. The good news is about 77,000 smolts actually made it into the creek when the tanker overturned, but over 25,000 smolts died and their carcasses were being recovered either in the tanker or on the stream bank. So what does this mean for the future when it comes to returns? Well, the smolts lost represent about 20% of the total that were scheduled to be released in the Imnaha River from the hatchery this year, and fisheries managers expect to see about 500 to 900 fewer adult fish returning in 26 and 27 due to this loss. Turning to happier news in the wide world of fishing, it's time for one of my favorite segments.
It's record fish time.
From Outdoor Life, we learned that a Utah fisherman followed his grandpa's advice and caught a state record tiger trout through the ice. Caleb Nelson was fishing Schofield Reservoir southeast of Salt Lake City, a lake that he's been fishing most of his life. Caleb told the correspondent at Outdoor Life that he'd always known about the lake because he'd heard his grandfather talking about it when he was a kid, and his grandpa would tell him about the big, beautiful tiger trout that lived there. So a couple of buddies and Caleb decided to go ice fishing there last December. Nelson had fished the lake both during the summer and winter. He knew it well enough to have a pretty good idea of where the trout would be holding. On December 9th, he and his friends drilled 4 holes over a grassy bottom and roughly 6 feet of water. And Nelson used 2 different jigging rods to alternate between 2 holes that he dug in the ice. Nelson said he had a heavy ice spinning rod set up and a light tackle one. He was fishing a white tube jig just over the weeds on the bottom when he got a hit. And after the hit, the fight was on. Caleb fought that fish for around 30 minutes and knew it was probably going to be a really big tiger trout, which, if you didn't know, is a hybrid species. It's a cross between a brown trout and a brook trout. Eventually, Nelson got a look at the trout, and when he saw it, he wasn't sure he'd be able to get it through the ice, because the hole was only 8 inches in diameter. But with the help of his friends, they managed to do it. They took a few photos of the trout, taped it out to be 32 inches long, then they pulled the jig from its mouth and released it right back into Schofield Reservoir. Although they never weighed the fish, the anglers estimated it was around 10 pounds, and they kept fishing through the afternoon, catching and releasing a dozen smaller tiger trout. Now, Utah regulations allow anglers to keep up to 2 tiger trout per day with only one over 22 inches, but Nelson says he's always put the fish back. And this big 32-inch fish was big enough to beat the standing catch and release record in Utah, but just barely. It was half an inch longer than the previous catch and release record caught in 2022.
Congratulations on your new record.
This portion of the show is brought to you by our friends at WorkSharp, and if you need to sharpen some lawnmower blades or some tools for gardening or other projects this spring, well, WorkSharp Tools has got just what you need with their manual and powered knife and tool sharpeners. You can check out the entire lineup at worksharptools.com. You'll also find these in quality sporting goods stores and hardware stores all over America. WorkSharp Tools, they make some really good stuff to help you keep your knives and tools sharp all year long. By the way, we've got a great show coming at you this week. We've got more news for you during the show about turkey hunting and a real success story out of Vermont. We're going to talk to Liz Rose with the Theodore Conservation Partnership about the significant increase of women hunting big game in Colorado and what that means for the sport. To outdoors writer Troy Rodakowski, who's got some great tips for taking kids trout fishing and helping them fall in love with the sport. He's got a lot of practice at this with his own daughter. And you won't want to miss our conversation with Bruce Stanton. He's a general manager for the fishing division of Pradco, and that's a company that owns Arbogast lures. And it turns out Fred Arbogast, the inventor of the Jitterbug bass lure and other iconic bass lures, is being inducted into the Bass Fishing Freshwater Hall of Fame, and they are coming out with some very special jitterbugs to commemorate the occasion. Throw in a story about a really, really, really big fish caught in Louisiana, and I think you're going to enjoy the hour ahead. So settle in and get ready to hear from our first guest, Troy Rodakowski, who's going to help you introduce your kids to the joys of fishing.
Let me introduce you to the Camp Chef high-pressure outdoor cooker line. We built this line of cookers with those summer seafood boils in mind. Whether you're looking to boil for a large group or just for the family, there's a high-pressure outdoor cooker built for everyone to enjoy. They come in 4 different sizes, from 30 quarts all the way to 100 quarts. Put that in perspective, that's 15 pounds of crawfish in the 30 quart and 50 pounds of crawfish in the 100 quart. So no matter how large your party is, you'll have the right tool for the job. These all-in-one kits include a high-output burner, a boiling pot, and a basket with a twist drain strainer for ease of use. Each cooker is equipped with an electric push-button ignition and a powerful burner for a faster boil. If you're looking for the right tool to take on your next cookout, the Camp Chef high-pressure outdoor cookers are for you.
John Kruse here, looking to improve your bottom line as a business that caters to outdoors enthusiasts? You can do so for a very cost-effective price by advertising on America Outdoors Radio. I will tailor a marketing campaign for you, reaching hundreds of thousands of listeners every weekend tuning into our show on 135 stations in 33 states. We've got a sponsor opening right now, so contact me through my website at americaoutdoorsradio.com and let's talk about helping you.
Hunt of a Lifetime is a nationwide nonprofit organization dedicated to providing hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under who suffer from life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. These adventures make big differences in the lives of those who participate in them, and in many cases are literally a dream come true that brings hope and therapy to their lives. Find out more, get involved, or donate today at huntofalifetime.org. That's huntofalifetime.org. huntofalifetime.org.
Fishing and fun. That's what you'll find at Mardon Resort. Come to sunny Eastern Washington and bring your RV or rent a cottage, cabin, or room at our newly upgraded resort at the south end of Potholes Reservoir. Get tackle and provisions at our general store. And after you're done fishing, hanging out at our swim beach, or boating for the day, enjoy dinner and a drink at the beach house. Find out more at mardonresort.com. That's mardonresort.com, where the fish bite and we don't.
Western bass anglers, time is running out to sign up for the Limit Out Marine Pro-Am and Big Bass tournaments coming up really soon. The deadline is April 21st to register for the Pro-Am, taking place April 25th and 26th at Potholes Reservoir in Eastern Washington. The winner of this event, if we get 100 boats, will win a brand new Phoenix Bass boat worth $50,000, and the amateur can win a $5,000 paycheck. Meanwhile, the Big Bass contest, if we have 100 boats, on May 4th and 5th at Potholes, the biggest bass will be worth $10,000, and there's hourly cash prizes too for the biggest bass weighed in every hour. Find out more and register today at bigbasstrail.com. We'll see you there.
Sportsman's Warehouse is America's premier outfitter with the gear you need for fishing, hunting, camping, paddling, cooking, and just about anything else you can do in the woods or in the water. With over 125 stores across America, there is bound to be a Sportsman's Warehouse near you, with not only the gear you need, but also the experts to help you get the most out of the product you purchase. Head down to your local Sportsman's Warehouse today or shop online anytime at sportsmans.com. That's sportsmans.com. Natural wonders, beaches and coves, majestic forests and scenic vistas are waiting for you at the Tillamook Coast. Lace up your hiking boots, grab your camera, and come to Northwest Oregon. Find out more at tillamookcoast.com.
Next up on America Outdoors Radio, we got my friend Troy Rodakowski on the line. He's an outdoors writer based in Junction City, Oregon, and he loves to take kids fishing, especially his daughter. Troy, welcome back to the show.
John, thanks for having me. It's good to be back, man.
Well, as we roll into April, a lot of parents are going to be taking their kids out to the local lake for some trout fishing, maybe the local river or stream too in some situations. Let's talk about some places where you like to take your daughter in Western Oregon.
So I'll list off a few here real quick. Of course, you know, we live in Junction City, so I love to take her to the Junction City Pond. It's a great place to go. They've got nice accommodations, little trails around the pond, and it's nice to be. And some other places we visited are like Wohink Lake out towards Florence, the Cottage Grove Ponds. which are down south in Cottage Grove, and we've hit Waverly Lake, of course, Cottage Grove Reservoir, and, I've taken her down to the Umpqua River for smallmouth. And yeah, there's just a variety of different places that you can take people all up and down the Willamette Valley here in Western Oregon. And of course, no matter where you are in the country, if you do your research, there's lots of great places to take kids and get them interested in fishing and have a great day together.
Well, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife does a great job at stocking lakes full of trout in the Willamette Valley in Western Oregon. It's something we talk about every Friday, I would say, on KPNW AM 1120 during the wake-up call when I get to chat with Bill London and Gary Schneider. But let's talk a little bit about taking kids fishing, introducing them to the sport, especially when it comes to trout, not just in Oregon, but anywhere in our United States. Let's talk about some mistakes you see parents make that actually turn off kids from fishing instead of getting them excited about it.
I think the biggest mistake that a lot of parents make is they'll end up and take a kid out when it's cold or rainy, and the poor kid gets cold and wet and doesn't want to do it and isn't interested and wants to get back in the car and get warm. Or they'll take them somewhere where there aren't other things to do, like ride their bike down a trail or have a picnic on a bench. So you got to have more than just fishing to get the kid interested or the child interested in the sport. And then when you do have a good day fishing, they enjoy it even more, and then they start to ask you, hey, when are we going to go fishing again? And, that's kind of the big thing with getting kids introduced. You got to find the right time and the right place. So you got to do your research and pick the right day to do it.
It's funny you say that. My dad, when I was a kid, tried to get me into winter steelhead fishing. And my memories as a kid was that it was always damp, it was always raining, and we were always going through sticker bushes, and we never caught a thing. And gee, go figure, it took me a long time to get interested in steelhead fishing. But when it came to trout fishing, my dad did it right. He did take me out on those sunny days. There were other things to do in terms of, okay, let's have a picnic, let's go ahead and go hike on a trail. And I have very fond memories of learning to fish streams, particularly the Poudre River in Colorado or several lakes in Oregon for trout, and having a great time with my dad. And it just made me fall in love with the whole sport of trout fishing. Let's talk about how to set up a kid for success so that they're learning and still catching. What kind of setup do you like to use for kids?
So I like to have, a smaller little rod, a simple rod, that a collapsible type that they can handle really well, whether it's an ugly stick or something along the lines of an ugly stick that, they can reel in really easy, they can cast really easy. And when they're first starting out, obviously you're going to be helping them with those things, the casting, and if you're using a spinnerbait, you're going to show them how quick you got to reel that spinnerbait in. And you got to be really hands-on when you're taking the kid for the first several times until they actually get the hang of it. And eventually they're going to be looking at you and saying, let me do it myself. And then that you've conquered that. And it's pretty amazing to watch the transformation over time. And, I've kind of watched that with my daughter over the last few years. It went from me doing a lot of the work to now she's like, Daddy, let me do it. And so that's really important.
When it comes to a young angler who's never done it before, do you usually start them out with bait, like whether it be power bait off the bottom or a worm under a bobber, or are you doing like spinners and spoons and flies?
All of the above. Honestly, kids get pretty bored sitting there watching a bobber, so I like to have a spinning rod and other things for them to do because they like to reel, whatever you got on the other end, whether it's a spinner or a worm, or they like to be able to do something, Just holding still in one place doesn't last that long, but for the most part, the best thing is either live bait under a bobber or a dough bait, like a power bait. That seems to work best, especially if there's some good stocked fish wherever you are. But like I said, I like to have a couple different rods around so they can learn to cast and reel at the same time, and it keeps them active and interested, and that's important.
Speaking of active and interested, do you recommend fishing from the bank or fishing from the boat the first couple times out?
Well, I started my daughter out on the bank. Now, of course, she begs to go in the boat all the time. And I think once a kid experiences some fishing from the boat and has some success, they like to just be out on the boat because you're out in the water and it's fun. But I recommend starting from the bank, getting the basics down with the youngster and having a good time. And, whether they're fishing the whole time or going off and catching salamanders or playing with butterflies, you just got to make sure that they're having a great experience. And then when you do catch fish, that makes the excitement even that much more better. And it's going to really pique their interest. And they're going to say, hey, I want to do this again because I had fun doing all that other stuff. But catching fish is even more fun.
Right. I agree completely. And let's not underestimate the importance of snacks and food.
Oh, if I didn't have snacks and food, my daughter would not come with me. She actually tells me, hey, are you going to put some Gardettos in there? Are you going to have some Pringles in there? Can you make me a tuna fish sandwich? I mean, she's the one that says, hey, bring this stuff. And if you have that stuff, they're happy because if the fishing's slow, they're going to say, hey, Dad, I want a snack. And they're going to sit there and snack. And, we'll keep an eye on the bobber while we have a sandwich together. And that's why it's kind of nice to I like to take a picnic and some drinks and have a nice place to sit. And scouting out a good place to take a kid is very important.
Oh, I agree. Again, it's all about comfort, it's all about having fun, and it's all about introducing these kids to the sport of fishing, making sure they have a good time so they want to do it again and again and again, just like most of you listening today love to do. So take your kid fishing, keep these tips in mind. One other thing I want to talk about, you are in the ag business, and I understand you are partnering with well-known outdoors personality Gary Lewis to roll out something new.
Right. We put together a Frontier Unlimited wildlife mix for deer, elk, and turkeys, and we're selling that on Gary Lewis's page, www.garylewisoutdoors.com, and at baileyseed.com. And I've been putting this mix together for years. I started with Boyd Iverson, and Gary and I teamed up since Boyd passed away. And we've got a pretty good formulation for most deer and elk and turkeys, especially out in the West here. And, we've had some great success with bringing animals into some food plots. So if you are looking into seeding something this spring, give us a shout. We'd love to help you.
All right, the website to go to, GaryLewisOutdoors.com. If you've got a food plot and you're looking to seed it with some stuff that deer, elk, and turkey are going to like, that's the place to go. If you want to read about taking kids trout fishing, check out Troy's article in the latest edition of Northwest Sportsman Magazine. Troy, always a pleasure, sir, to have you on America Outdoors Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hunting and fishing are exercises in hope. Before you head into the woods, you hope to tag out on a deer you'll have to field dress. Before you make that first cast, you hope for a big fish to clean and fillet. When your hopes are realized, you'll need a sharp knife. Whether you sharpen that blade on a power sharpener in the shop or a manual sharpener in the field, WorkSharp has the tool for you. Look for WorkSharp products in sporting goods stores near you or online at WorkSharpTools.com.
We've been telling you about Sportsman's Cove Lodge in Southeast Alaska for a while now. They're truly Alaska's best lodge. Wildlife is abundant, from bears and deer to eagles and whales. And let's not forget the reason you're here, the fishing. Halibut, salmon, lingcod, rockfish, true cod, and more. It's all waiting for you in abundance at Sportsman's Cove Lodge. Book your trip today at alaskasbestlodge.com. That's alaskasbestlodge.com for Sportsman's Cove Lodge.
Ready for more local fishing and hunting? You got it. It's the Pacific Northwest edition of America Outdoors Radio, right here on Seattle's Sports Radio, KJR.
Next up, we've got Russ Baker on the line. He's the man behind Limit Out Marine in Pacific in Spokane Valley. He's also the man behind the Big Bass Trail, and he's got a Pro-Am tournament that's coming up April 25th and 26th at Potholes Reservoir. But you've only got 2 weeks left to sign up. The deadline is April 21st. Russ, great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.
So why don't you remind our listeners how this Pro-Am works? It's a pretty exciting tournament. I really enjoyed fishing it last year.
Well, this is one of the biggest tournaments on the West Coast currently. It's a lot of fun, I can tell you that. I mean, it's you want an opportunity to learn from a local pro to fish Potholes Reservoir. If we get full pull, it'll be 23,000 acres of water to fish, and it's mostly going to be won by power fishing, meaning with either a jig or swim bait and some of the guys, I think last year Luke Lawson won it with a drop shot, so you just never know, right? So, Potholes is a beautiful reservoir. O'Sullivan Reservoir, some people call it. It's right centralized in the middle of the state. Beautiful body of water, lots of trees, lots of beaver huts, lots of brush and trees to lay down. But this is a shared weight program where the pro and the co work together to get the best 5 fish, and that weight is shared to day 2. So both the anglers try to catch the best 5 from the pro and the co in the back seat. Unlike other tournaments like this, they work together instead of against each other. So the pros are actually competing against the other pros in the other boats, and the co's are competing against the other co-anglers in the other boats. And then day 2, those partners are switched. So the co-angler and the pro-angler both fish with different partners for each day. But the cool thing about it is that weight is shared. So the pro and the co work together to the best 5 fish, and the weight shared. The pro has an opportunity to win a boat, brand new finished bass boat, in the $50,000 range, and the co has a opportunity to win $5,000. If we get the 100 boats like last year, we'll pay 20 places. So first through 20th on each side, on the pro side and the co side. It's a great opportunity to learn how to bass fish. It's a great opportunity to hone your skills as a bass fisherman on a very popular lake in the state of Washington. So it's a blast. It's actually a lot of fun. And if you want to try your hand at bass fishing, there's no better opportunity in the state of Washington to learn how to bass fish Potholes Reservoir.
I couldn't agree more. Fished it last year, fishing it again this year as a co-angler, and I hope you will too. Again, the deadline's April 21st, so sign up today at bigbasstrail.com. That's bigbasstrail.com for the Pro-Am taking place April 25th and 26th at Mardon Resort and Potholes Reservoir. You're back in with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Kruse. We've got a fun little interview for you here. We've got Bruce Stanton on the line. He is the general manager for the fishing division at Pradco. And Pradco is a company that owns a number of iconic lure companies, to include Arbogast Lures and Fred Arbogast, that very famous manufacturer of fishing lures. Lures like the Hula Popper, lures like the Jitterbug. Well, he's being inducted into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame this year after his very first vote on the ballot. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, John. Glad to be on here.
So why don't you briefly tell our listeners a little bit about the legacy of Fred Arbogast?
Yeah, well, Fred Arbogast grew up in Akron, Ohio, and worked for Goodyear Tire and Rubber, like a lot of people did that lived in the Akron area. And he liked fishing, like a lot of the early people in the early days of bass fishing. And he had an idea for a lure. So what he would do, John, he'd go into his wife's kitchen and he'd take the broom and he'd cut it up into pieces so they'd look like blanks of a fishing lure. And then he'd go into the utility cabinet and he'd pull out spoons and forks and all kinds of things. And the early days of the Jitterbug, he took out 2 spoons and he sawed off the stems of the spoon and he attached 2 ends of the spoon together. He attached them to the end of that piece of wood from the broom, and he attached hooks to the belly of it and would paint it up a little bit, made it look like a little frog, or just paint it black, like the famous black Jitterbug. And that was the early beginnings of the Jitterbug lure, which has been around since the 1930s. One of the most commercially successful fishing lures in the business. And he started by raiding his wife's kitchen with pieces of a broom and spoons. So we like telling that story, but it just shows the ingenuity of people like Fred Arbogast, how their minds would process, how can I catch a bass? How can I make something different to catch a largemouth bass? And thankfully, he thought of that idea. If you're probably our age and your 50s or 60s, you probably remember going into Grandpa's tackle box and seeing that Jitterbug, and you throw it out off the dock and hear that plop, 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 plop. And you got a connection to Fred Arbogast and how that bait started.
Well, I'll tell you what, that bait still works. I was lucky enough for a few years to live on a little 40-acre reservoir that was a great bass and panfish spot. And I'd go out in the canoe at sunset, and that Jitterbug right as it was turning from dusk to dark was just a magnificent topwater offering that the bass couldn't resist. So I've still got some jitterbugs in my tackle box. Still got a hula popper, too, for that matter. So they still work, folks. They might be iconic, but they still work. Now, let's talk about the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. I understand it's kind of like the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown for baseball, where you get voted on, and it might take you several years to actually make it into the Hall of Fame, and some people never make it into the Hall of Fame, even though they're on the ballot. But Fred Arbogast, he got on the very first time, didn't he?
He did, and that's a great analogy comparing the process to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. There's a nomination process and there's a voting process, but one of the members on the nominating committee recognized, wow, you got Fred Arbogast that started Arbogast Lures and had iconic lures like you mentioned, the Jitterbug, Hula Popper, Hawaiian Wiggler, many others, is not in the hall. And when you look at like icons like James Haddon and Bill Norman, Cotton Cordell, Gary Yamamoto, there's many lure designers that are in the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. So it just seemed appropriate, and the voting was nearly unanimous. By far, the most votes went to Fred Arbogast. And, you know, if you fish for bass, you've got to say he's very deserving of being in there with the other lure designers.
Oh, I agree completely. Now, you said that you have to be at least 50, or you told me this off the air, to be considered for the Hall of Fame. And that's kind of the tragic end of Fred's story, is that he was only 53 when he passed, wasn't he?
It is. He died in an ice skating accident, and, you know, he didn't obviously survive that. And I guess the commercial success of his company as it proceeded on through the 50s, 60s, 70s on into today, he never got to see that. And, you know, if you go to a Walmart store, for example, there's over 3,000 Walmart stores in the United States that carry jitterbugs and hula poppers. And you got to think every state in the lower 48, almost every county, you can walk into and buy something that Fred Arbogast made. And, you know, when you think about product inventors, I don't know how many people invented product in the hardware aisle or the grocery aisle, but I doubt there's many people that invented things that have stood the test of time and have been in Walmart stores going on 40 years in that many stores.
Well, that's certainly a fitting legacy, but Pradco's doing one better. You're actually rolling out a line of 1,200 very special jitterbugs in honor of this induction into the Hall of Fame, and the banquet's going to take place in September, but these are on sale now. Tell us more about them.
What we'll do, John, is we'll introduce the colors. So we've got, Fred Arbogast will have a color that we'll choose, and then we've got famous pro fishermen like Bill Bance, who we're associated with, Jason Christie, who we're associated with, won the Bassmaster Classic 2 years ago, and then probably the best tournament fisherman of all time, Kevin Van Dam. And the neat thing is Kevin does not work for our company. He actually works for competitors, but Kevin worked for us 25 years ago, and he's obviously ascended to many championships, both in BASS and Major League Fishing, and he's on the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame board of directors with me. And Kevin was the first person I thought of when I thought of this idea to make these limited edition jitterbugs. Obviously, being on the board of directors, we're always thinking of ways we can fundraise to support the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. We have a museum at the Wonders of Wildlife Museum in Springfield, Missouri, which Johnny Morris launched a few years ago, and it's an amazing place to celebrate the history of bass fishing and all the heroes that go with it. So, you know, $12,000, just doing the math, if you sold 1,200 lures for $10 a piece, that's $12,000. I'm from Tennessee, so it's real easy for me to do round number math. I don't have to add a bunch of digits and stuff without a calculator. But Kevin just jumped all over. He said, hey, I know I work for Strike King, but I want to put my name on that. I want to design. I'll call the people at Strike King, make sure it's okay. And, you know, big credit to Rocky Calso. He's the president of North America Rather Outdoors that owns Strike King, and Ken Eubanks, president. Even though we're competitors, they said, you know, this is for a great cause. Kevin, you put your name on whatever you want. And I think that just shows, even at a high level in a competitive environment, when we're talking about bass fishing and a nonprofit like the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, competitors come together and, you know, we do things that maybe we wouldn't normally do. And, you know, I just think that's a credit to the fishing culture. We see people on the water, we nod our head to them, we say, how you doing, how many you caught. And it's cordial. And I think in the boardrooms for nonprofits to celebrate bass fish, it's a lot the same.
Well, folks, again, your opportunity to get something very special here. 300 of these jitterbugs are going to be autographed by Bill Dance, 300 more by Kevin Van Dam, and 300 more by that very well-known Bassmaster Elite Series angler from Oklahoma, Jason Christie, and a final 300 will have the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame logo on it. When will these become available, and how can people buy them?
Well, the place you'll be able to buy them is lurenet.com. That's LURENET.com. And what we'll do at Pradco, we'll just go ahead and make the check for $12,000 to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, and whatever we sell, that'll all go to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. So I would say, John, late summer, those will be available for sale. What we're going to do is probably introduce the colors over the next few months. Frank Scalish, who is another tournament fisherman from the Cleveland, Ohio area, he's actually our color designer, and he designs a lot of the colors in our Booyah brand, our Head and brand, a lot of the new colors you see, and he's very talented, and he's working with Kevin and Bill and Jason to design their special Jitterbug color, and we'll release those through lurenet.com, through social media channels, starting with the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, and then we'll send out media releases like we did, how you found out about it. And then I would say late summer, probably July, August, they'll be available on Lurenet. And then for everyone going to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame banquet, which is in Springfield at the Wonders of Wildlife Museum, we normally have about 350, 400 people. We'll have a special set, probably about 20 sets of 4. And Bill Dance and Kevin Van Dam have already told me they'll be on hand to autograph every single one of them in person. So if you're lucky enough to go to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame banquet and you're lucky enough to get one of those sets of 4, you're going to have at least 2 of the icons there, Sharpies in hand, autographing for you.
What an opportunity, and what a great cause, and what a great way to honor Fred Arbogast. Again, folks, lurenet.com, that's the website to go to. Check it out now for all sorts of different iconic lures, but definitely be checking it in late summer and get yourself a little piece of history here. Bruce, thanks for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Good talking to you, John. We appreciate it.
We've been telling you about Sportsman's Cove Lodge in Southeast Alaska for a while now. They're truly Alaska's best lodge. Wildlife is abundant, from bears and deer to eagles and whales, and let's not forget the reason you're here, the fishing. Halibut, salmon, lingcod, rockfish, true cod, and more. It's all waiting for you in abundance at Sportsman's Cove Lodge. Book your trip today at alaskasbestlodge.com. That's alaskasbestlodge.com for Sportsman's Cove Lodge.
Explore the Dalles, the hub where discovery and history come together. Whether the Northwest is your home or you're on an adventure, the Dalles welcomes you. Just 80 miles east of Portland is the perfect year-round escape with a community that cares about you. 300 days of sun, breathtaking outdoor recreation, and a downtown full of the unexpected. Oh, and the rich history that began before the Oregon Trail. Start planning at explorethedalles.com.
Ready to step up to a quality-built rifle or shotgun that's a true classic? Check out Henry Repeating Arms, American-made. There's over 200 models to choose from in a variety of finishes and calibers for hunters and target shooters. Many of these are lever-action models with a look right out of the Old West. Don't be deceived, though. Henry Repeating Arms are modern, rugged, accurate, reliable, and have a lifetime guarantee. Find out more and order a free catalog today at henryusa.com. That's henryusa.com.
Hunt of a Lifetime is a nationwide nonprofit organization dedicated to providing hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under who suffer from life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. These adventures make big differences in the lives of those who participate in them, and in many cases are literally a dream come true that brings hope and therapy to their lives. Find out more, get involved, or donate today at huntofalifetime.org. That's huntofalifetime.org. huntofalifetime.org.
You know, it's true. Difficult times have a way of focusing us. We have to think about what matters most when it comes to our spending, our healthcare. No doubt. This is why so many people are joining Medishare right now. Medishare is a trusted way to save up to 50% on your monthly healthcare costs. More than 400,000 people have already made the switch. It's pretty obvious why, too, especially now during this challenging season with healthcare costs and out-of-pocket expenses going up. Medishare can save you a lot of money. The typical family saves $500 a month. And Medishare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry that's worked beautifully for 29 years. There are different options to choose from to fit your budget. I'll give you the number here in a second, and if you call, you can get a price within 2 minutes. Maybe now is the perfect time to make the switch and start saving. Here you go. Call 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE 40. 855-SHARE-40.
Welcome back to America Outdoors Radio. Our next stop is the Centennial State of Colorado. We have got Liz Rose on the line. She's a Colorado field representative for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, and she wrote a blog recently that has some great news about the rise of women hunters in Colorado. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So why don't you share with our listeners some of the stats about women hunters? We have figures from 2023, and we have figures from 2016, and boy, oh boy, there's been an increase, hasn't there?
Yeah, that's right. So I was lucky to get some of the data from Colorado Parks and Wildlife on total big game applicants from 2016 to 2023, because I was curious to see the trend in women participation over those years.
And what are the numbers?
So in 2023, there were about 755,000 total big game applicants, and of that, 84,384 self-reported as female, compared to in 2016, there were only about 455,500 total applicants, and of that, only 48,540 were self-reported as female. So it's a big increase. That
is a really big increase. As a matter of fact, female participation in the sport of hunting is increasing as well nationwide, isn't it?
Yeah. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service released their annual survey data in 2023, I believe, and it showed that almost 25% of all types of hunters nationally are women.
Well, that is great news because, we've been working on this whole R3 concept of recruiting and retaining hunters for about 15 years now, and one strategy has been to try to get more women into the field. And we've talked about it on the show before, there's barriers. A lot of females just didn't have that father figure or uncle or whoever to take them hunting, so they never learned it, or they, have never learned it from their spouse. And so they're trying to figure it out, sometimes with other women, because it's a lot less threatening when you're with other women sometimes. And it looks like those efforts are paying off. Has the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership had a hand in this with maybe some activities that they're doing for women in Colorado?
The Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership has supported events that are geared towards mentoring and teaching beginner hunters. However, we focus a lot on state and federal policy work and empowering other partners that do more of the kind of on-the-ground mentorship and learning programs.
Absolutely. Though I did notice on the blog there was a very nice picture of you and a number of other hunters, most of them female, that were spending a day at a facility owned by Colorado Parks and Wildlife shooting some clay pigeons.
Yeah, that was for my birthday last year. I convinced a bunch of my friends to come shoot shotguns with me at a newly acquired CPW shooting range that's pretty close to Denver. It's still run by a private company, but thanks to funds generated from a variety of sources, including Fish and Wildlife Service and other sources, it's going to continue to be a public shooting range for years to come.
Liz, I love the way you celebrate your birthdays. That's pretty okay. Let's talk about one other thing, too. More hunters in Colorado is actually good for the state in terms of habitat and for hunters and anglers, too, isn't it?
Yeah, hunters and anglers contribute about 66% of Colorado's wildlife revenue, and that's what makes Colorado Parks and Wildlife to employ biologists and policy specialists and a huge number of dedicated staff that are the ones on the ground making sure that our wildlife laws are enforced, that we can get great habitat improvement and conservation projects done, and making sure that we have enough wildlife in state to support the continually increasing interest in hunting Colorado's wildlife.
And one other thing we should point out here, folks, we're just talking about big game hunters here. We didn't even get into small game or upland birds or waterfowl, did we?
No, and that's maybe next year. That'll be my blog to figure out what those trends look like and who's out there hunting waterfowl and small game and what the difference is between some of those endeavors and big game hunting.
Well, in the meantime, if you want to read more about the subject, go to trcp.org. That is the website for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. Sign up for their weekly newsletter. It's absolutely free. And check out this blog as well as other very interesting ones about conservation and hunting and restoring and saving our public lands, and the organization that advocates for this both on a federal and state level. Liz, keep up the good work, and thanks for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Thank you so much for your interest. I really appreciate it.
This portion of the show was brought to you by our friends at Henry Repeating Arms. And with turkey season approaching, especially youth turkey season, some of which are going on right now, you might want to consider a single-shot shotgun from Henry Repeating Arms for that kid you want to introduce to turkey hunting. Now, they come in 12 gauge and 20 gauge and even 410 gauge. And the 20 gauge and 410 gauge shotguns, well, they're your classic wood stock, but the 12 gauge is actually the turkey camo shotgun. Comes with a high-vis sight. It's fully camouflaged, and all three of these shotguns are made in America. They are all rugged, they're reliable, they look great, and they shoot straight right out of the box. So go to henryusa.com today. Check out the single-shot shotguns they have available and the turkey camo shotgun, and get a kid hunting with one of these this season. The website again, henryusa.com. Speaking of turkey hunting, the youth and novice turkey hunting season in Vermont is happening April 27th and 28th this year. The regular spring turkey season is May 1st through the 31st. And this might not seem like a big deal, but I'll tell you what, if you were in Vermont prior to 1969, you would be hard-pressed to find any turkeys there because there really weren't any. But 1969, that was the year that Vermont Fish and Wildlife scientifically reintroduced wild turkeys to Vermont. And today, there is a booming population. As a matter of fact, last year, youth hunters took 786 turkeys, novice hunters took 37 turkeys during the April weekend hunt, and during the regular spring season, hunters took 5,763 gobblers. According to Chris Bernier, Vermont's wild turkey biologist, hunters last year, between the spring and fall turkey hunts, harvested in excess of 160,000 servings of locally sourced free-range turkey meat. According to Bernier, to go from essentially no turkeys in Vermont before 1969 to a booming population that can provide over 100,000 meals each season, as well as wildlife viewing opportunities statewide, is a conservation success anyone who cares about wildlife can be proud of. Mr. Bernier, I agree with you completely. This is indeed a great success story. Next up, we've got a whopper of a fish story for you. It comes out of Concordia, Louisiana. That's where a 92-pound grass carp was caught. And had it actually been caught on a hook and line, it would have broken world records. Instead, biologists with Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries caught the grass carp that measured nearly 50 inches long on March 11th during routine spring sampling of Lake Concordia. The fish would have beaten the all-tackle world record of the International Game Fish Association set in Bulgaria back in 2009 by 4 pounds. The monster carp would have also tied the current world record of the Bow Fishing Association of America set in Alabama back in 2015. And here's the kicker to this story. In addition to this grass carp's mammoth and unusual size, the species had never been seen before in Lake Concordia, according to the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. I've seen some big grass carp before, but never, ever anything like this. It's time to wrap things up, but a final thought. Having been suffering from this knee injury since early February, I have really had a hard time getting outdoors. And Washington State, where I live, does have some ADA accessible fishing locations, and groups like the Inland Northwest Wildlife Council have even built ADA accessible hunting blinds. But there's not a whole lot of them. And I'm guessing a lot of states have the same issue, that there's a few ADA accessible places, but not a whole lot. So even though I'm on the mend, I've definitely come to realize that we need more of these. So lobby your state Fish and Wildlife Agency or Department of Natural Resources and ask for more ADA accessible locations to fish, to hunt, to watch wildlife, and see if they have a guide of those places available. And then, whether you're physically disabled or maybe a friend or maybe a relative, you can get an idea of places to take them so they can enjoy, or you can enjoy, the outdoors no matter what your physical limitations may be. After all, we really do want to get as many people out there as possible, because the more people that we have recreating outdoors, the more people we have appreciating the outdoors and wanting to conserve it and wanting to protect it. Something to think about. On that note, it's time to go, but here's hoping you're blessed in the days ahead, and here's hoping that you are able to get outside and get your dose of Mother Nature. After all, it is your country and your outdoors, so get out there and enjoy it.
Looking for that extra something that will get more salmon or trout into your boat? Then check out the Double D Dodger from Mack's Lure. The Double D does double duty and helps you catch more fish. The Double D's flash attracts lunkers, and the Dodger's patented stop-start action works wonders to get those fish biting. The Double D does even more by acting as a side planer to get your bait away from the boat where the fish are more likely to be and more apt to strike. The Double D Dodger. It's the Dodger you've got to have from Mack's Lure.
A seafood bounty is waiting for you on Northwest Oregon's Tillamook Coast. Catch a limit of big salmon, haul up a pot of delicious crab, and dig up a bunch of clams for some hot chowder. Plan your visit today at tillamookcoast.com.
Don't leave yet. We've got one more local shot of fishing and hunting to wrap up the Pacific Northwest edition of America Outdoors Radio.
You know what time it is? It's time for another extended Max Minute. With us again is Bob Loomis. Bob, welcome back.
Thank you, John.
This week, we're going to talk about kokanee destinations in the Beaver State of Oregon. What are some of your favorites when it comes to springtime fishing?
Well, the springtime fishing, there's a number of really good lakes in Oregon. Some of them are up at higher elevations, so you got to wait till about mid to later spring for just pure weather issues. But Detroit Lake is a fantastic lake. Odell, Wickiup, Lake Billy Chinook. You've got a number of really good fisheries in Oregon.
And you didn't even mention the lake where the world record kokanee was caught out of, Wallowa Lake.
Wallowa is one of the most beautiful destinations that you will ever fish. But it's a situation that, 1 out of 25 fish is going to be a decent fish. When I say decent, I'm talking about a 3-pound fish, and then all the rest are going to be 12-inch fish. So you're out there working through all of those other fish. It's beautiful, and it's a lot of fun to fish.
Well, let's talk about how to catch these fish.
Well, early spring, I'm going to use Double D Dodger with a Kokanee Mini Pro. Late spring, I'm going to go to a Sling Blade with a Cha-Cha Squidder.
Are you tipping it with bait or not?
I'm tipping all of them with bait, absolutely. Shoe peg corn or maggots.
How come we don't use worms for kokanee?
Growing up, we did, and they worked.
Well, there you go.
Shoe peg corn and maggots seem to work better. Therefore, you just don't hear many people using nightcrawler, but it does work.
Well, there you go. Whether you want to use worms or shoe peg corn or maggots, you know what to do. And you know what lures to use. You can find them at sporting goods stores near you or online anytime at maxlure.com.
That's all for this week, but don't worry. We'll do it all again next Saturday morning from 7 to 8, right here on Seattle's Sports Radio, KJR.